Give me a second. Okay. All right, it's back. Okay. Shows me on. Wow, it's going to be one of those nights. Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. I was having trouble doing stuff on the internet just before I got in here to shoot the intro and everything, the normal intro for the show. And I decided to reset my router because everything was going, was slowing down and I was dropping off. And I got a message. Hang on, I got a message. Guess I'm ready to go. I got a guess going. And I got a message that my internet was down. And it's down in my net. It's down for about 5,000 people. So I was debating. I still have it on my. Technically, it's showing up on my laptop, but it's be one of those in and out nights, which would really suck. Like we get. So I decided to do it on my iPhone. So we're doing it straight from the iPhone tonight. So I don't have all the goodies that I normally have, like the intro and that. So this is where we're at, and you guys should be able to hear me pretty good. They've got a nice headset that I took with me to Disneyland. So all this stuff is like Disneyland stuff I'm using, including the light over off to the left. I've got extra light in here too. We got a great show tonight. My name is Charlotte. I'm going to be your host for the next hour. I'm also the owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team based out of Sacramento, California. We're 45 strong up and down the state of California, which means if you have a paranormal problem, we can get to you. It might take us a while because California is a big state, but we can get to you. And if it does take us a while, we usually have psychics on staff who can call you and talk to you about what's going on in your home or wherever. They can talk to you about that. And sometimes they can simmer it down before we get out there and calm things down for you. So, yeah, so we still can get to you. And the neat thing about that, too, is we're easy to find. We're all over Facebook. We're on Twitter. We're on Twitch. We're at YouTube. We're on TikTok. And if you want to find us on any of those pages, look up California Haunts on Facebook. Look up California Haunts Radio on YouTube. Look up Cal Haunts on TikTok. No, I'm sorry. Cal Haunts on Twitter. TikTok, we're California Haunts. Instagram, I'm Ghosty Gal, all lowercase. You can find us all there. And Twitch, I believe we're also Cal Haunts. Anyway, if you're watching tonight and you like what you see and hear, please let me know by giving me a thumbs up or some hearts or something like that, just to let me know that you're watching and that you enjoyed it. And what that does is that puts us higher in the algorithm because there is an algorithm even for Facebook and YouTube, and we like to be up a little higher in the algorithm. So if you could help me out with that, I appreciate it. Just like if you like what you see tonight and you haven't done so already, please feel free to follow if you're watching from Facebook, or if you're watching on YouTube, please feel free to subscribe. We've got over 582 videos over there, and there's all kinds of topics in there. I'm a journalist. I hate sticking to one topic, so yeah, there's just different stuff, and I'm sure you'll find something. The other thing is I'm starting to take all these topics that I have, and I'm putting them, in order and category and stuff, and that way you can find things easier that interest you. Okay, tonight's guest. I hope I say her name right because you guys know how I am about names. Mary Cuccia, Cuccia, and she's got an interesting story to tell. She was abducted by aliens, I believe, in 1992, and she's kind of in a way, built her life around that experience. But I think she should tell her story. So I'm going to bring her in right now and get this show on the road. Okay? Also, before I do that, you see that thing running at the bottom. That's because California Haunts Radio is technically a nonprofit, so it's California Haunts. So any money we get in goes towards equipment and stuff. And what I'm going through right now is I have a laptop that has very little hard drive space. So I'm thinking about either replacing the hard drive in the laptop or getting a backup. And the backup runs about 120 for it to get the size that I like. So if you guys could help me out with that, that would be great. You can do that at paypal.com at /California Haunts, or you could do that at Venmo and just type in California Haunts. I really appreciate it. Every little bit helps. And thank you to the people that have already donated. I appreciate it. Okay, let me bring Maria in. Okay, let me do this again. There we go. Add the stream. Okay.
There you are. Hi.
Yeah, I had internet issues, so I had to switch to my phone.
No problem.
So tell me about you.
It's so nice to meet you.
This is great. Yes.
Beautiful email. It was just very interesting. You've led a very interesting life.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, so have you though. You've lived a very interesting life. Let's hear about your life.
Let's hear about my life. I think, as per your email, you heard my story about um, an experience I had in 92. Like you said, I was 32 years old. I was married at the time, and I had one infant daughter. And actually, in 92, I had my three daughters already. But what happened was that night, I woke up at 3 o'clock a.m. and I just felt this energy like racing
Mhm.
through my body. And I just looked over at the clock, and it was around 3 a.m. And next thing I remember is like I felt like I was just being lifted so quickly out of my bed. It was intense. And the next thing I remembered was just standing on what looked like a ship, an
Mhm.
aircraft, and there were beings around me. There were about, I think there were about three beings from what I remember.
Mhm.
And they were wearing long white robes, and they had hoods. So I didn't really see their faces, but I did see a lot of light around them. So, people say aliens, they talk about all different breeds and all of this. Back then, there was not much information out. That's what I recall consciously. I didn't really see their faces, but
Mhm.
they were telling me to look out a window. There was a large glass window, and I looked out and I saw a big group of children, so many children. And one child was actually instructed to turn and look at me, and we gazed eyes. I saw him. He looked at
Mhm.
me. Our eyes met, and I just had this warm feeling throughout my entire body. And I said, "Is this my son?" I just turned and said, "Is this my son?" And I heard in my mind, "This is your son. His name is Elijah." I was told his name. And there was just I don't really remember what I was saying after that, but I
Mhm.
do remember them saying, "It's time for you to go back now." That's what's conscious in my mind. It's time for you to go back. And when we return you, we want you to look up the meaning of his name. And the next thing I remember is I was just like flying. This electricity again. I was going down. And then I just, bam, sat up in bed. I felt this pounding in my chest. And I just sat in bed saying, "What the heck just happened?" And I heard a voice. It was like in my head, "Look up the meaning of his name. Look up Elijah." It was so intense. I got out of bed. I went into the room where I had a bookshelf, and I searched, and I knew I had a book of names from when
Mhm.
my children were babies. And I looked up Elijah, and I read, "The Lord is my Savior." And I literally just sat on the floor and cried. I said, "What?" I didn't know what was happening. So the next day, I, of course, I was telling my husband at the time, and I said that something really weird happened to me. And I told him the story, and of course, he just kept saying, "It was a dream. It was a dream.
Mhm.
Get over it. Get over it."
Mhm.
But I knew it wasn't a dream. And what happened was I thought about it a lot, and I remembered that about 8 years prior, I was 3 months pregnant, and I had gone to the doctor. That's when I had an infant at the time.
Mhm.
I was much younger then. I think I was 24 years old. And I was pregnant and went to the doctor,
Mhm.
and we saw on the sonogram, saw the heartbeat, heard the heartbeat. Doctor said, "Wow, very strong heartbeat. You look great." And, that was it. I went home. Everything was fine until the next day. Next day, I woke up. I had excruciating pain. I just was screaming with pain. And I tried to, just walk across the room, and I literally fell to the floor. I was screaming, and I screamed for my husband. I said, something's wrong, something's wrong. And he tried to help me up, and I screamed even louder. I said, get an ambulance right now. So he called an ambulance. The ambulance came. They put me in, and I was screaming and screaming, and they were trying to get me to calm down and this and that. And all I remember is I think I passed out. I passed out from the pain. And I remember just like waking up and not even realizing where I was. And then obviously I knew I was in an ambulance, and I just said, everything's okay now. And the guys, I remember, they just looked at me. They said, you were just screaming a minute ago. And they were just looking at me weird. And I said, everything's okay. I don't know why I said that. But I was brought to the hospital, brought in. Doctor was there, and he examined me, and he said, Maria, I'm so sorry you're having a miscarriage. And then him, the nurse, whatever, I had to pass the fetus. And I just remember crying, being upset. I didn't understand what happened. I was so healthy the day before. I was sent home from the hospital that night, and cried myself to sleep. The next morning I was having breakfast, and I received a phone call. And they said, Maria, you've got to get down to radiology immediately. I said, why? What's wrong? They said, well, we examined the fetal sac, and there's no fetus. And we think the fetus is still inside you.
Wow.
So I went to radiology. I had a sonogram, internal, external. The doctor called another doctor in, called the nurses in. They're examining me because they thought maybe, it could have caused a lot of damage, and they were baffled. They were just baffled because of the sonogram the day before, the miscarriage, the passing of the full fetal sac, and there was no fetus. So when I had this experience in 1992, I wondered, is that possible? But back then, there were no stories like this
Right.
I hadn't heard any stories like this. So it really caused a problem for me back then, because I insisted that I saw this boy and he was mine. And to this day, I still believe I will find him. Now we can talk about this. Now I'm seeing women all over the world going through the same experience. So was I delusional at that time? Was I, or is this a mass phenomenon that's happening? So that's where we're at, basically.
But you're right, because I don't remember up until the last couple of years of hearing stories like that.
Right.
Because I heard my first version of a similar story about a year ago. And I couldn't believe it, and I thought, really? And yeah, like you say, it's coming out more and more. Maybe because people are more comfortable talking about it.
Yes, and that's why I'm just starting to talk about this again. I did speak about it way back then because I was determined to figure it out, that something happened. I just wanted to figure it out. I read books back then. I, explored many scenarios, but, what I had to do back then was channel that energy into something, because I went to psychiatrists, I spoke to priests, I went for hypnotherapy. Now, under the hypnotherapy is when I had recall of some very frightening experiences. And again, today people are talking about that. Back then, I didn't understand it. I regretted going for the hypnotherapy then, but I recalled examinations, being on a table, being surrounded by beings, something was happening. So that frightened me at that time. But I reached a point where, you know, it was either I listened to the psychiatrist and take some drugs to forget about everything, to calm my brain, or I stopped talking about it, which is what I did, but it was still bothering me. And what I started to do back then, what helped me was prayer, meditation. And once I started doing that, so much changed for me. I started hearing music, and I basically started composing music for healing. And
Really?
that helped me at the time. And I attributed all my music to Elijah. I said Elijah every single day of my life since that experience. Music by Elijah, Elijah Records, Elijah Studios for recording. So that's what helped me back then.
What did Elijah look like?
What I recall, again, it was an experience that was bizarre, but the biggest memory I have, he looked like an 8-year-old boy. And for some reason, his arms stood out, very long arms, because when he looked at me, he just waved very slowly. It was like the arm. That's what I remember. We locked eyes. So I can't really give you fine features of
Right.
what he looked like. I didn't know what was happening. It was a boy, and it was just an emotion that I had. I wish I could remember more details.
When you talk about the stuff that you found out when you were under hypnosis, could you share some of that with us?
There were, I remember one day that I had a severe headache. This is what drove me to go for the hypnosis. It was a very severe headache. And I went into my bedroom, and I remember lying down on my bed, and I heard all of a sudden the sound of a helicopter. And it sounded like it was right outside my window. And I remember getting up to say, what the heck is going on? And I remember looking out my window, and I saw a bright white light. And then I don't remember anything. So it's like I fell asleep. I had that severe headache, but something said, let me explore this, because I remember getting up and seeing that light. So there was a hypnotherapist in the area, and I had gone to him, and I have the tape. So I didn't know what to expect, but I recalled looking out the window, and then on the tape, I'm saying, I'm going up, I'm going up, I'm going up. And then you hear me just like breathing heavy, like something happened. I'm breathing heavy on the tape. And then I said, I'm lying on a table. There's beings around me. And, it's a little bit of, what are you doing? Why? And I'm saying, why? And then I'm saying, but what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? Why me? Why me? So it's things like that aren't clear. It's not like, okay, I have to do A, B, C, and D. A part of it, one thing that came out was that I had to record music. Music was the one thing that I felt I was told I had to do.
What were the examinations like?
It's definitely like the ones that are described today by the women.
Okay. Were they very painful at all?
Like I said, on the tape, I'm saying, what are you doing? You hear my voice like being agitated. I'm not screaming in pain. It's more like a violation of don't touch me. It was like those kind of things, or but I can't. Like it was, I had no choice. I had to go through whatever it was. I had to go through.
Uh-huh.
So
Can
it
you
was, yeah.
can you hear their voices on there as well? I mean, I'm sorry about that because it's a tape. Were you able to recall their voices?
At one on I went for more than one session then,
Okay.
and on one of the tapes, my voice was literally like, uh, "Relax, relax. Why are you doing this to me? Just relax."
Wow.
So my voice was changing and all, was altered, creepy. It was like an exorcism almost in a way, like being, because it felt like it's coming out of me. So is
Right.
this, you know, you wonder, is this an entity that entered, or is this an entity from an experience that is literally abducting and telling me things?
Now, when you like, did you know when they took you? I mean, like in the next morning, did you have marks on your body or anything like that?
Again, after more and more started coming out, I would look for that.
Uh-huh.
But I did start to speak at some point. There were UFO conferences, so I did begin to speak about it more. The marks, I don't really recall the marks.
Uh-huh.
What I started to have was helicopters. It was like
Okay.
I was there was a 6 helicopters circling my house, like one day after I spoke at a UFO conference. And again, this is as time went on. I spoke a little bit,
Uh-huh.
and then there was neighbors were asking me, why are those helicopters circling your house? I felt like I was, there were a couple of phone calls. There were a couple of warnings back then, but I don't like to talk about that
Uh-huh.
because at this point, it doesn't really mean anything. People are talking now, so
Uh-huh.
I felt like like there was an attempt to make me look crazy,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
and so that's what I said. So I channeled it into music. I've been quiet for 30 years, and I'm on right now I'm writing a book, and I wrote the book. It just has to be edited,
Uh-huh.
and I actually have a few, um, people interested in
Cool.
people in Hollywood are interested right now, and so the details of my experiences are in the book. It's
Okay.
easier to write it than
Right.
talk about it.
Absolutely. So before you had these abductions, were you into writing music before then, or is this something that happened after the abductions?
I was a classical pianist,
Okay.
classically trained. I did study music, but I had never composed. And after the experience, I couldn't. I sat at the piano, but I felt I can't. There were sounds. I was hearing sounds and vibration in my mind. I was praying every day, and I was meditating, and these sounds were coming. So I finally got a keyboard, because keyboard and synthesizers, and they were new back then in
Uh-huh.
the 90s. And I just I had to learn how to operate the synthesizer. And what started happening was I was getting up usually around 3 in the morning, going downstairs. I had a little piano studio in my home, and the music was just coming to me. And as I said, then I just recorded. I had CDs, cassettes back then. I actually started with cassettes and then CDs, and I actually have one right here. I just there's no more people just download music now, but I was actually listening to this one the other day, and everything was music by Elijah. You see that?
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
that's what I was doing at the time. And one of the experiences under hypnosis, um, the voices that I was mimicking or, hearing at the time said, we will send people to you, we will send people to you. And then what happened was when I started trying to record music, I didn't really know, how to go into a studio and create a CD or something. But people would just, I would meet somebody and turned out they were a musician. I said, do you know how to, do you know of any recording studios? And yeah, and then people just started helping me. So little by little, it grew into a record label, Elijah Records.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Because you hear a lot of stories about people that get abducted like that, and they come back and they have some kind of talent. So something that I don't know if it happens when they're on the ship or, like you say, they told you to go and make music. So maybe that's what they're doing, so that they gift you. It's kind of like giving you a gift for them taking you. But you hear a lot about that.
Yes. Yeah.
What do you think? As far as your music goes, like you write it for Elijah. What do you think also inspires you? Because there's got to be that inspires you. You think maybe the being on board the craft inspired you, or are you taking stuff from nature, or where's it coming from?
Oh, it's all nature. Everything that I do. Oh, it's completely nature. I mean, this is all. I was one of the first to record meditation music. I ended up being written up in New Age magazine because I have ocean sounds and seagulls, and then I put a melody with the sound of a foghorn in the background. So yes, I mean, that's what I felt, that just we need to listen. We need to listen to nature. So much noise. Everybody's always talking and there's so much on the TV. And I think, that's what helped me, was just meditating. I lost it. At first it was so fearful, mainly because it's a violation.
Right.
Like I said, there was a violation of me physically. There was a violation mentally. And I was scared because no one understood. No, I couldn't talk to anyone back then because people thought I was nuts. But that did force me. Like I said, I ran to the psychiatrist. I ran to the priest. I ran to psychotherapists, psychologists, friends, family. And then I said, no one gets it. And that did force me to pray. And because there was nowhere else to go. And then there just so much beauty came out of prayer and the meditation, just being quiet and listening. Yeah, there's voices in my head. So am I schizophrenic, or am I in tune to angels and, who are protecting?
Right. The other thing people don't realize, I think, when you talk about meditating in nature, there's a lot of noise in nature. People don't realize that. Like, if you're out in the woods and you just settle down to listen and you hear the wind blowing through the tops of the trees, there's a lot more noise out there than people think there is.
Right. And it becomes very musical. And that is, what I try to do is mimic the sounds of nature, but then, put some melodies with it. And,
yeah. Absolutely. I might have some of your stuff. We don't know. I have a bunch of that stuff on my phone, because I listen to that stuff.
Well, I had stopped for a while because then life went on, and I got into co-founded a medical device business. So there wasn't time for it for a large part of my life, but now I'm returning to it. That's why I'm starting to speak, and that's why I wrote, because during COVID, I just spent time looking at all my journal entries and things that I just kept in a box because, like I said, I didn't really talk about things too often. So I wrote notes here and there, journal books or pieces of paper, notebooks. And during COVID, I went through the box and I took everything date by the dates. And it was like taking puzzle pieces of my notes, dreams, experiences, bizarre craziness, ghosts in a house, hauntings in my house that I had. I mean, those stories were insane. And then, of course, these abduction experiences. So I put it all together, and that's what I wrote about. And when I sat back and read it myself, it's like, wow, there's something real here. This has been something happening since childhood. I had stories I wrote as a little girl about the funny creatures I was hanging out with, And then even as a teenager, I was writing stories or saying, last night I had a dream that didn't really feel a dream. So when I put it all together in this book,
right,
it's really telling a story. So
let's talk about the ghost now. So you opened that door for me. Tell me about the ghost.
That story. Where do I even begin? I'll just say when I met my ex-husband, the day I met him, he had a house, has the house. He still has the house. He's a chiropractor. It's a home office. And when I went there for the first time, I realized I had been there before. And it was this feeling. And then I looked around and I realized, you know what? I went to that nursery school right across the street. And it was in a church. And the pastor used to live in that house. And so that was like this first thing of entering this house now at age 21. I walked in and I said, there was a feeling, an eerie feeling from day one, the minute I entered. Throughout, I started working he and I just started working together. And 1 year later, we were married. It was a whirlwind. So then I lived in the house. He owned the house when I met him. And then we married and I moved in. So when I moved in, doors would open. I'd see doorknobs turn. They would start to open. One day I was in the kitchen and I heard, the door in the den slam, and I thought he had entered. I heard footsteps and I'm talking to him, David, I'm making lunch. You want some lunch? And he's not answering me, another day I was talking on the phone and the light above me fell and just missed me and crashed on the floor. Wow. Frying pans were turning. It got very intense, but what I didn't tell you was the major thing that I should have told you first is a lot of things happened prior to the wedding, prior to marrying him. And we worked together. It was a home office. I had a desk and we worked and, we were going to get married and that's when I was going to move in. The morning of the wedding, a car hit a tree stump and flew through the house. Wow. In the morning of the wedding, he was there. I was home with my parents sleeping at home. He was almost killed. His best man was buried. And the car went right through my desk. Wow. So the morning of the wedding, he and the best man were in the hospital. And I didn't know if the wedding was on or off or what was happening. And it was major. We were in the news. We've been on, so many newspapers about it. Nobody would let me see the house. It was my Italian family, protecting me. And after we got married, I have so many stories. That would have to be another show for you.
Did you ever find out who or what it was?
Yes, I did.
Was it someone that just didn't like you or what?
Yes, it was.
See?
There was someone who didn't like me. I mean, I would walk into the office, and when he had other receptionists there, I would walk in and start talking to receptionists. And we had, I don't know if you remember the old printers, for billing,
Right.
they would print out the bills and everything. All of a sudden, paper starts flying out of the printer when I walked in, and it was going insane and shooting paper out all over the floor. And it happened more than once. And the receptionist actually said, "Do you mind like not coming in here?" She literally said that. In fact, I met the woman. This woman still works at the office, and I saw her, and she brought it up. She goes, "Remember when you used to walk in and the papers would go nuts?" But I did find out. I actually started seeing these spirits. I saw them, and they just didn't like me. It's like they were trying to scare me out of the house. I'll just make a long story short. Like I said, maybe another time. This detail is in the book too. This is all in the book. But I described a woman and a man who was bald with hair on the sides of his head, and another man. But it was the woman who didn't like me. And it turns out from all my research, because I looked into it, I described exactly this woman who was married out of that house years ago.
Okay.
So she was still there and didn't want me there. Like I said, there's more to the story.
No, just from what you said, that's abundantly clear that somebody didn't want you there.
Someone did not want me there. Yeah.
Wow. But you're still married, though, right? You still did it.
No, we're not married, but it was a very friendly divorce. It wasn't like a nasty divorce. It's just, our daughters are grown, and we're still, we talk. He's remarried. This is my time to write and get back into the music and do things. And
I'm just saying, with all that going on, it's obvious that somebody doesn't want you to, be there or marry him. You still married the guy.
Yeah.
That took guts.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, this is what I try to say to people. There are things that happen in life, and either we, then you realize, okay, why don't they want, because there's something good here. And because everybody said, why didn't you take the warnings and just not get married? They have asked me that, but I wouldn't have my 3 daughters who are my angels. And it's just, after a while I learned, again, because of my faith and because of the personal relationship I have with the higher powers above, you learn to almost find humor in these things that are so frightening. You reach a point where you just, you hold on to faith, and everything is a state of mind, and we go through things in life, and it really makes a difference on how we view it.
Right.
We have that ability, to view things like, is the glass half empty or half full?
Right.
That's a choice. Who's right? Who's wrong? There is no right or wrong. It's how you choose to look at it and perceive it.
See, I agree with that. I think that's why a lot of ghost hunters have real offbeat senses of humor, or morticians, right? Or even police officers, because of the stuff they deal with. I mean, there's no other way to deal with it. Otherwise, you lose your mind.
Exactly. Very good point. Yeah, I agree 100% with that.
So you've had quite the history. You have a very interesting life.
Well, you know, like I said, I took my puzzle pieces, I put it in a book, and now it's like, okay, that's going to be a little strange for me because I really let it all out in the book, you know.
Right.
It's I'm
If
not
you
ready
wanted,
yet, but it'll happen.
with everything that you've gone through in your life, if you had a message for everybody, what would that message be?
I think like I said, life is full of so much strangeness, fear.
Hmm.
You know, there's a lot of negative things, especially now going on. But my message is just keep a strong mind and keep the faith, you know, and just feel that everything is a lesson. Try to grow from whatever experience it is. Try to say, okay, why am I going through this? And
Hmm.
how could I turn this into something positive for myself? And that's what I try to do, you know.
Makes a lot of sense. But
Mhm.
getting back to Elijah now,
Mm.
um, sometimes I've heard stories about similar abductions where they'll actually let you hold the child or have
Mm.
contact with the child, but you didn't get a chance to do that, did you?
I wish I did. No, it is something that, you know, like I said, I pray that somehow something will come to light. You know, it's starting. I have more hope now than ever because, you know, government's having to reveal things. I personally feel he's here on Earth. I don't believe he's on another planet.
Hmm.
Something's happening, obviously. Something's going on. I mean, there's so many shows now that are helping people realize that there's more to reality than meets the eye, you know,
Right.
and truths will have to surface soon. So it's my hope that we know what's really going on. There's so many theories out there,
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
many theories. For me, it's hard to, you know, people try to explain what happened to me, but
Hmm.
I come from a medical background, you know, I deal with, you know, engineers who you have to prove things. So,
Right.
uh, and I'm only talking, I mean, there's definitely UFOs flying around. There's enough proof of that. There's substantial evidence for that. I think there's enough substantial evidence. But as far as this hybridization and proving somebody is a hybrid or,
Hmm.
you know, I just think there needs to be a little more discovery.
Hmm. That was my next question. Did he look human enough, like you think he's here on Earth? So did
Yes,
he look human enough to pass as one of us?
yes,
Okay.
yes, I believe so. Like I said, the only thing that seemed a little you know, not so typically human with very long arms. I just remember his arms were unusually long. I don't know why that stands out in my mind, but
Hmm.
it does. Like I said, he was waving, so it just seemed like a very long arm for a young boy, you know.
Wow.
So,
Incredible experience.
mm,
When you look back on your life, and obviously you have because you're writing these books,
mhm.
what sticks out to you the most?
What's sticking out now? Thank you for asking that because it's really just as of recently. Because as I'm editing and rewriting, trying to figure out what is this common thread here,
Hmm.
I see almost as if there's been some sort of experimentation that is didn't just start with me. I'm seeing it
Hmm.
as the bloodline. So I'm looking into my maternal bloodline, and I feel that that's what I'm more focused on. Like that will help answer some questions if I go back in time with my research. of my grandmother, my great grandmother,
Right.
and now it's kind of like a very interesting, of common threads, genetics right now, epigenetics, because realizing that we don't just inherit eye color and height and weight,
Mhm.
we inherit emotions, emotional codes.
Mhm.
So that for me is just a strong area of interest right now.
The
People.
other thing too, it'd be interesting to find out, and I don't know how you would do this, but I mean, usually when there's abductions like yours, this happens with other family members as well.
Yes, yes, I know. I'm thinking about those things as well.
Have you asked your mother about it at all,
Well, see,
or your father?
it's funny that you brought that up, because one of the main reasons why I did divorce my husband is because my mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's
Oh,
one
okay.
1 month after my father died. So I became her caregiver. I just gave up everything in my life,
Absolutely.
and I wanted to care for her. And it was interesting, some of the things that I experienced with my mom,
Mhm.
at a point where she didn't even know who I was. And
Right.
very interesting stories. I mean, she was in a nursing home and had a heart attack, massive heart attack. And we rushed her to the hospital. And then the doctor said she had so much damage and she can't understand, what we're telling her to do. There was no communication. So it was basically, um, she was just, we were told she had about 3 days to live.
Wow.
And we started calling all the relatives. They were booking flights to come in. We thought we were going to have to plan a funeral.
Sure.
And 3 days passed, and they said at the hospital, we can't keep her here because we're not doing anything for her. So
Mhm.
you have to take her out of the hospital. So we put her back at the assisted living, and I got a blow up bed, and I said, I'm not leaving her side for a
Mhm.
minute. So I slept on the floor. She was in her bed, and one night I heard her, all of a sudden I heard her voice, and I jumped up, and I see my mother smiling in her bed, and then I hear her say, John, which was my father's name,
Right.
you know, where have you been? And she starts talking. She had this whole conversation. She said, I've I love your suit. You look so handsome. My father always wore suits. So I'm just listening and listening. And then all of a sudden, my mother says, I don't want to go. I'm not going. I don't care if my brothers are there. I'm not going with you. And she was fighting with my deceased father. And I'm witnessing all of this. And she's just having this fight. And then she just like fell back on her bed. And I thought, that was it. Like, that was the
Mhm.
end. She lived 3 more years
Wow.
with a heart that was half functioning, never had medication, no more exams. 3 more years she lived.
Wow.
And during that time, there were more episodes like that where I felt she was drifting, but communicating.
Right.
There was a communication, it wasn't a memory of something.
Right.
Like I would know, oh, my aunt is here today. There's this one, there's that one. So I witnessed all of that. And so what does that mean? You
Right.
know,
Right.
so I strongly feel to this day that we can communicate with the spirit world. I, I,
Mhm.
I think there's enough proof of that. And there's, like I said, I wrote a lot in the book that kind of makes you say, how could you not believe that we're able to communicate?
Mhm.
So um, I think there's a big connection between being able to communicate with spirits
Mhm.
and this whole alien agenda. I just think it's all related,
Mhm.
you know.
Now, when you were under hypnosis, were you able to describe what the aliens look like?
I I don't think under the hypnosis I said anything about it, but coming out of the hypnosis, I do believe it
Mhm.
was the typical grays.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
that's what's in my mind, like after the experience. So for that, those experiences that were more subconscious,
Mhm.
I feel are more negative because they work on your subconscious. The
Right.
conscious experience I had where I was shown Elijah, for
Mhm.
me was more of a positive. So if we go back in time, for me, that's the difference between angels and demons. You know, these are all words that we choose. You know, now
Mhm.
we have so many different words for what these non-human beings are, but um, you know, we all know that there's positive and negative in everything. So I
Mhm.
feel like I experienced both, and um, again, you know, whether it's positive or negative, it helps one grow, or at least for me, it
Mhm.
did, you know.
Mhm.
So I never felt like a victim of anything. You know, I was
Okay.
frightened, definitely frightened, but it was my choice to turn it into something positive. I could have chosen to remain a victim my whole life
Sure.
and turned into a depressed woman, like I said, popped some pills, you know.
Yeah.
These are choices. It's hard.
Absolutely. When you were talking about your mother, I was smiling because I spent 6 years with my mother
Mm.
the same way.
Oh wow.
And I remember times when I would hear her holler from her bedroom, "I'm not ready yet."
Oh, you're kidding.
Mm-mm.
So you had the same thing?
Yeah,
Wow. So you know exactly what I'm
yeah.
talking
So it's interesting all the relatives that she saw come to the house, you know. And being a ghost hunter, it was funny because when I would go talk to the doctors and take her into the ER and stuff, they'd say, "Well, is she hallucinating?" And I thought, it depends what you mean, because I'm a ghost hunter, and to me, older people tend to, the closer they get, they tend to see their loved ones.
about. Mm,
So I was
that's
walking the fine line with it. So I said, I don't know if I should say it or not. What are you going to do if I tell you? Because, I mean, yeah, we had the relatives just popping right through the house all the time.
wild.
But she couldn't remember who I was. But, I mean, I just stayed in her world, and that's how I worked it out.
Yeah, that's exactly into their world.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's an experience you'll never forget because you
It's
got to spend that time with them.
right.
Even if it wasn't your mother remembering you got to make new memories with her,
Yes.
and you got to build that up with her and spend that time.
Yes. Yeah. Beautiful. I love that you had the same type of experience. That's great.
Yeah, yeah, I did. That's why I was smiling, because I thought, oh yeah, I know.
Mm.
If somebody comes to you and says that they think they've been abducted, what
Hmm.
do you tell them?
I encourage everybody to share stories. I think that's the
Mhm.
main reason why I'm speaking. I just have a story. This is my story. I'm nobody special, you know,
Mhm.
and I just think it's so helpful I would listen if somebody came up. I'm there to listen. I have no answers. I'm not as I've done, you know, there's so many people who have done so much research, like I said earlier. I can't spend my whole life really reading up on everything, but
Sure.
I'll listen to anybody's story, you know, because I always wished I had somebody who would just listen to me without thinking something was wrong with me, you know?
And plus, I think being able to talk to somebody about that helps. It's medicinal for you and the other person, because they're able to get it all off their chest instead of holding it in.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think more people, I think so many people have had experiences and are just so afraid to talk about it. And
Mhm.
like you said, it's medicinal to be able to just share it,
Hmm.
not be afraid.
And I don't see how the government and scientists. I don't see how they can keep denying this stuff because there's just too much of this happening. There's too many reports of it.
Well, that's why I'm glad that enough people have kind of forced the government to
Hmm.
disclose information. So, I mean, they're still keeping so much hidden. It's so obvious that they are, but we've
Hmm.
come a long way. Like I said, from 1992 when I had my experience, we've come a long way.
Oh,
And
absolutely. It's definitely more open than it was.
yeah.
I remember when I first started ghost hunting, 20, 25 years ago, how we were walking on eggs just to like go in and talk to people. How much that's come around too with all the TV shows and everything. Because I
Mhm.
remember going down to a city hall to let them know that we were going to be in town filming. To do a ghost hunt at this place called the Woodland Opera House. And I remember going in there and thinking, oh, they're going to think I'm nuts. They're going to think I'm crazy. So I had to go in real delicately and say, look, this is what we're going to be doing, and all this and all this. So it has changed a lot. All that's changed a lot.
What do you do when you go ghost hunting? I'd like you
Depends.
to do the house and see if these spirits, what you.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We will go in. We'll do a preliminary, like I'm talking to you right now, interview you, have someone walk around and take photos, and then we're looking at windows. We're looking at like sound, how sound will bounce off the walls of the house. Can you hear stuff from outside? Because we're
Mm,
looking at practical stuff too. Once all that's done, then we'll go in and do the investigation. I have a remote psychic. I send her a photo of the front of the house. I don't tell her where it's at, and I let her do a read on it. And then we have a different psychic that comes out with us on the investigation night,
mm-hmm.
and they're usually 95 to 96%
Wow.
correct
Wow.
together when we
Wow.
go out. And then of course we have all the
And then do you communicate, or what if the
yes,
ghost is
yeah,
haunting
well,
the house? How do you get
yeah.
them to?
The psychic usually will start the communication part of it, or if we don't have a psychic with us, we'll do it just like the guys on TV. EVP equipment. We've got all kinds of equipment to look for them and to get their attention. We might use trigger items. In your case, it just depends what's going on in the house and how we approach it.
So have you heard? Have there been any episodes like mine where a car literally went through the house? Because there were other accidents too at the house. Usually when
Right.
I was there.
Not
So.
quite, but I've heard incidents where someone's in the kitchen
Mhm.
and all the pots and pans get thrown at them.
Mm, wow.
Things like that. Yeah,
Wow.
the car is the first time I've heard that. Wow. You know. But we do a thorough investigation. We're there 4 or 5 hours, and
Mhm.
then we'll go back over everything, and then we come back and sit down with you and go, look, this is who we think it is. We might even involve you in the investigation if you're there. If we start having real good communication, we might bring you in, and you talk with the ghost as well. To see if you can come to a happy medium.
Well, that's what I always tried to do. Like, okay, like I said, my story's in the book, but I just got to the point where you they started scaring me, but then when
Right.
you got the fear, it's you find humor in it,
Right. Right.
like, but
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So where do you live? No, you don't have to tell me where you live. I'm just kidding. That's making a joke. We'll be right over.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what's next for you?
What's next for me? I
Yeah.
as I started to say, before I even published the book, I'm right now in discussions with the Hollywood producer, and there's strong interest in producing the movie. I'm also talking to an HBO producer,
Mhm.
and so it's discussions. So we'll see what's next. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I don't want my story to be um, twisted in any way.
Absolutely.
So I think that's why my focus is to get the book done first, because
Mhm.
that's my true story, you
Mhm.
know. And then, like I said, it's almost done, but I just keep. It was hard to write it the first time, and so now I'm going back and just cleaning it up. Okay, and so that's the plan. Book being published
Mhm.
and consideration of the either movie or series. You know,
Absolutely.
it's a
Absolutely.
story to tell, and again, it's just to help people. I just want to
Right.
help others. That's why I
Right.
don't. It's got to be my true story
Mhm.
first,
Hey.
and that has to be known first because I don't think people should fear being abducted by aliens, which is what happens when Hollywood gets a hold of something,
Absolutely.
or
Absolutely.
fear of ghosts in the house, just call a ghost ghost hunter, we'll just let people know
Well, look
that.
at the trends, even with the ghost hunting. I mean, back 25 years ago, when you watched these shows, it was Uncle Bob. It was some relative that was in the house, and because they want that scare factor, now it's old demons.
Right.
It's always something dark in the house, and it's hard. It's hard with clients to go, no, it's not dark. Just calm down. We got to see what it is because
Yeah.
that's what they've done. Just like you're saying with your own story, you don't want it twisted into something that it's not. It's
Right.
just because they want the big numbers. It's not fair to you.
Exactly.
So
Right.
I'm glad you're going about it the way you are. What's your website?
It's just my name, mariacuccia.com.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Yeah.
And you do have you do have a book out, correct?
Just I contributed my Elijah story. It's just a
Okay.
chapter of a book. That's the
Okay.
turning points. That's on my website. But
Okay.
my full book will be called When the Teapot Cries.
Cool. All
Teapot.
right. Well, we'll
Yeah.
be sure to get you back on after you get your book out.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Love to
So,
have you back on. This was fun.
yeah, it was nice speaking with
This
you.
was
I
fun.
appreciate it.
All
Thank
right. Well, you have a great rest of your evening.
Okay, you too.
Okay. Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.
See how I do this? See, it's hard to see. See. Oh, there we go. Can I do it that way? Let's see. Let's see. Okay. We'll do it that way. Oh, I kicked her from the studio. I didn't mean to do that. I've never done this on my iPhone before. This is the first time. The reason why I did the iPhone tonight for the guys that came in late is because my internet was acting up when I was first starting to work on getting stuff set up for the show, like the intro for the show and stuff. And then when I went to reset my router earlier, it told me that the internet was completely down in my area. It would be down until 10 p.m. tonight. So the whole night's been weird. So I went to go back in and it showed it on, but I thought, well, I'm just going to do it on my iPhone because who knows? We don't want to be dropping off when Mario disappears like we do. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. I want to thank her for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. And tomorrow night, we're going to be talking UFOs again, but it's going to be kind of cool. Sounds like a TV show. UFOs and drive-ins. Yeah, UFOs and drive-ins. Our good friend Preston Dennett's going to be with us tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Pacific to talk about dun, 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 UFOs and drive-ins. I heard his story the other night. I thought it was great, and I think you're going to enjoy that show. So anyway, I want to thank everybody for coming. Again, if you're watching from Facebook and you haven't done so already and you like what you hear, please be sure to hit that follow button, hit those thumbs up, hit those hearts, those smiley faces. Same thing with YouTube. If you haven't subscribed, please do so because we're always looking to build up our subscriber numbers. And leave us a comment or two. Let us know how you feel. I see Katie was in the room tonight. Jerry was in the room tonight. Marisa was in the room tonight. Pamela was with us there live tonight. Love it. Love to see people in the chat room. And I could actually, what's funny is on my iPhone, I could actually read the chat where I can on my laptop. Go figure. But anyway, I want to thank everybody. And if you like the show, share it with 5 people. If you hated the show, share it with 5 of your enemies. Equal opportunity here at California Haunts Radio. And again, please be sure to like and subscribe if you liked it. Let people know about us. Please do share it with your family and everybody else you know, because we're just trying to get the word out. We're like the little show that could, so we're just trying to get the word out. And again, thank you. And I will see you guys tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. Have a great evening. Let's see if I can do this right now.